I know that we can.
I know darn well we can work it out. Oh, yes, we can. I know we can. Yes, we can. Oh, why can't we if we want to? Yes, we can.
I know we can make it work.
Thank you for joining me. Yes, we can with Pastor Sherman D.Manning. I am back now for a second hour of one of the greatest attorneys in Los Angeles, California. This is part two, so to speak. He was getting ready to tell me a story. I hope he held on to it and can remember it. But for those of you just tuning in, if you didn't see his dossier, so to speak, go back and watch part one. But his name is attorney Tariq Khero. And he is here with me today. He's a super lawyer. He's a criminal defense attorney. He was in the middle of telling me a story. Please proceed.
It wasn't so much a story as an observation, and that is this. After practicing for over 20 years in Los Angeles, I have seen and come across and been involved with police officers that I thought were dishonest and corrupt. I have seen and come across countless police officers that all they want to do is right for the community. And I've seen police officers selflessly help people. And this is a very big city, and it's an enormous, between the sheriff's department and the LAPD and all the other ones,
Right.
There are many police officers of all stripes. But
Right.
one of the things that actually I was educated with, I actually came into the criminal defense system prejudiced against police officers. And that prejudice has been wiped away. I see them more as individuals now, like I see my clients. And so I just wanted to say that because brushing with a broad stroke in any direction is always a dangerous thing.
It certainly is. I mean, and fortunately, I have police officers in my church. I have a sergeant with the sheriff's department that I go to church with, and I know Dennis to be a great man, a man of integrity. But since we're going there, I think one of the other problems, though, with corrupted officers is that you can have an officer who is by the book, who is a good man, who is a man of integrity, but oftentimes when they see their coworkers, when they see their fellow officers doing things that are illegal and that are corrupted, they won't report it because they don't want to be labeled as a snitch. So that is problematic in this country also. Let me ask you this. Tell me about attorney Frank Gooch. How did you meet Frank? How did you meet Frank?
I worked at a firm. I was a partner in a firm, a very well-regarded criminal defense small firm in Santa Monica, Nassatir, Hirsch, Podboreski, and me, Khero. And Frank Gooch was a very good friend with one of the senior partners, Richard Hirsch. And I met Frank through Richard, and Richard is one of the all-time great people. He's an attorney. He's a fabulous attorney with a bigger heart. The attorneys that taught me how to practice law, Michael Nassatir and Richard Hirsch and Vicky Podboreski, they practice criminal law by leading with the heart. And it doesn't sound like you'd see a criminal defense attorney in a movie or a TV show, but the way that they attached to their case was by caring deeply for their client and by finding the human elements in their client and being able to translate that to the court and to the DA. Now, Frank Gooch is a man who leads with his heart. And I didn't know that until I met him. He actually referred some cases to my old firm when I went into private practice. He did the same, but during the course of those kind of professional contacts, I learned much about who he was, his life, his character. I even saw him on your show say that his ideal is someone who helps someone else with wanting nothing in return.
Yes.
And that's really very beautiful, and it describes him. And he's a humble man, so I'll say it myself, that Frank described himself that way. And I aspire to be a guy like Frank Gooch. I really do. Absolutely.
He's an amazing person. And as an aside, he is also my booking agent for the show. Mr. Gooch has gotten me more guests, and he's just a great guy. He's just the kind of guy that when you talk to him over the phone, you just know that the Spirit of God is in him, and we need more people like Frank Gooch. Now, I won't ever try to get you to speak negatively about another attorney. But if you have anything good to say about, my mom will say, if you don't have anything good to say about somebody, don't say a word. So I just want to ask you off the top of your head about some attorneys and get your opinion on them. Johnny Cochran, how good of a lawyer was he?
Johnny Cochran is the model for a criminal defense attorney, for a trial attorney. Now, I only knew Johnny very briefly. Again, my senior partners, Mike Nassatir and Richard Hirsch, they knew everybody, and they knew Johnny very well. And when I was a young attorney, before I was with their partner, I would see Johnny either in the hallways of the court or in our office building briefly. But one of the things that Johnny did that every criminal defense attorney aspires to do is to translate their case, make it a story that the jury can understand. Take something very complicated and make it and simplify it, and not dumb it down, but simplify it so you hit whatever the issue is, and a juror can say, now I see what this is. And I don't mean to be cliche but when Johnny says, if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit, it's not a cute rhyme. What he's saying is, there's a jury instruction, and that is, if you have two reasonable interpretations of what happened, one leads to guilt and one leads to innocence, you must vote not guilty. You must. The law says, if you can reasonably believe this person is not guilty, even if you reasonably believe they're guilty, if you can reasonably believe they're not, you must vote not guilty. And so what Johnny said is that if that glove doesn't fit, assuming the prosecution, and again, I'm not an OJ trial expert, and I was in law school when it happened, but if the prosecution was saying that that was the killer's glove, and I'm not talking about OJ anymore, I'm just talking about lawyers and evidence. The prosecutor's saying that was the killer's glove, and that glove does not fit the accused, then you reasonably can come to the conclusion that he may not be guilty. And if that's your conclusion reasonably, then you must vote not guilty by the jury instruction. So in a very literal legal sense, if the glove does not fit, you must acquit. It was almost a jury instruction he was giving to the jury. And it's genius. It's genius. And I think sometimes people lose the genius because they hear the rhyme, but it's genius. It's genius.
And another thing he did in that trial, and I remember it almost as if it were yesterday, he grabbed a beanie, a cap, and he said that the prosecutors want you to believe that this was a disguise, that OJ put on this skull cap, as he called it. He says, now, you've been watching me for more than a year now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Johnny reached over, grabbed the cap, and put it on his head and said, who am I? I'm Johnny Cochran with a skull cap. It's no disguise. It doesn't fit. You must acquit. The guy was just able, as you said, simplify it without dumbing it down. I mean, I was fascinated by Johnny Cochran. Have you heard of an attorney by the name of Dana Cole?
Yeah, I know Dana very well.
Okay.
One of the great things about being a criminal defense attorney, even in Los Angeles, is that the fishbowl is kind of small. And that's true, even though we have cases in Long Beach and Pasadena. We have cases in Lancaster and Pomona, I mean, LA County is it's endless, and the amount of criminal court buildings there are seem to be countless. Yet, if you do it long enough, you see the same faces in the hallways and in the courtrooms all the time.
Absolutely.
And you get a sense of someone's character. And Dana's always Dana's one of these guys, like my old partner, Richard Hirsch, who always seems genuinely happy to see you.
Yes.
And I love that, because when I was a young attorney, I'll tell you right now, I was scared to death. I was scared to death. The courtrooms, the judges, the DAs, it's all a very intimidating thing. And to see a friendly face, to have a comforting force, and then to see someone also practice law in a personal, familiar, friendly way. You don't have. One of the great things I learned about being a lawyer, and again, it's only in the last 10 years that I learned this, is you are the best lawyer if you are yourself. If I try to be Johnny Cochran, they will see the falsity. They will see it in me. If I try to be anybody. And so the best advocate you are is when you're in touch with your best qualities. And Dana always seemed very comfortable in his own skin, and I love that about Dana.
What a nice guy. I will tell you, and you may recall the story vaguely. At the beginning of the pandemic, I protested in front of the mayor's house on behalf of the homeless, asking him to commandeer buildings and put them into housing so that they wouldn't literally die from COVID-19. Now, to make a long story rather concise, the mayor attempted to negotiate with me initially. He had his chief of staff to call me. I don't know how she got my number, and she was trying to set up a Zoom meeting between Mayor Eric Garcetti and myself. So my reply was, I'll do the Zoom, but I want 4 or 5 homeless people to be with me during the Zoom. They said no. The very next day, attorney, the mayor's wife had me arrested while protesting in front of the house, and this is a story all over the news, pastor arrested for felony stalking in front of the mayor's house. That was me. And I called Dana Cole. He was referred to me by another person, and Dana said, if they actually try to charge you with that, I will represent you. And of course, Jackie Lacey said there was no felony stalking, and the case, they dismissed the case. But the problem is I posted a $150,000 bail.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
And so then I said, I got to sue these people. Dana filed the lawsuit for me. He's no longer representing me in the civil case. But the fact of the matter is, when I needed an attorney to stand in the gap to preserve my rights because of something you know a lot about, statute of limitations and all of that, Mr. Cole did that for me. And I really, really appreciate him. Tom Mesereau, what do you think about him? His law practice.
Again, these are titans of the criminal defense practice. I know Tom. He probably doesn't remember me, but I know Tom again through my partners Mike Nassatir and Richard Hirsch, who were among this kind of top shelf of Southern California criminal defense attorneys. Mm-hmm. He's a force to be reckoned with.
Okay.
And I only say that from watching him from afar.
Right.
But there are some attorneys who, and I don't mean to compare them to an actor, mm-hmm. meaning they're acting, but in terms of they are one with their profession, like a Marlon Brando or a Robert De Niro or someone who just is able to be in the moment all the time with what they're doing. And that's how I see Tom. And again, it's more from a distant view, but that's how I see Tom.
Well, Tom has promised to come to my church. If you're watching me, Mr. Mesereau, because I'm certainly going to send him this podcast one day, and I'm hoping that day will finally come on September 9th, because I'm going to be honoring a woman by the name of Mother Teresa, and I'd like for you to Google her, Attorney Khero, when we get off. She is the executive director of the Francisco Homes, and she helps guys who are coming out of prisons who have done life sentences, and I'm going to be honoring her for her saintly-like work. Her name is Sister Teresa. I call her Mother Teresa because that's who she reminds me of. You talk about selflessness. So September 9th at 7 o'clock p.m., I'm going to honor her at my church. It'll be on the website and all that. I'm going to invite Frank Gooch. I'm going to invite Attorney Matthew Close, Attorney Elizabeth Mitchell, and many others. One more attorney. Have you heard of a guy by the name of Lenny Levine?
Yes, I have. And again, if Lenny's listening, I know of Lenny directly through Mike Nassatir and Richard Hirsch. I'm going to keep saying those two names because those guys are the brothers of Mesereau and of Levine and of Cochran. It's like
so Lenny is a high-powered lawyer also. Am I correct?
Yes, okay. Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
And this Richard gentleman that you keep, is he still practicing?
No, both Michael and Richard have both retired. So I am not promoting them. I am just
you're not trying to get them. You're not trying to get them any business, but these.
No, nothing.
It seems like they were really inspirational to you and your career. Say a little bit more about. Tell me who Richard was or is, as a person.
Richard Hirsch was both Michael Nassatir and Richard Hirsch started practicing law in the early 70s. Mm-hmm. One of the things, and I'm going to speak about them together a little bit.
Yes.
Because they were partners for most of their career. One of the things that they did, well, I will start by saying they are my mentors, both legally, professionally, and personally. Yes. Because, like I said, they lead with the heart and with integrity. And one of the things they taught me first and foremost when I walked into their office is, don't you always tell the truth. Your integrity and your reputation is number one, and don't you dare give it up for a single case.
Right.
And I used to go to court as a young attorney, and stand in for Michael and Richard. And the judges and DAs would always say hi to Mike for me, say hi to Richard for me.
Right.
And I was like, wow, this can really happen. But professionally, what I most admired about them is they were on the forefront of what is now a thing, and that's called alternative sentencing. Well, back then it wasn't called alternative sentencing. There was no name for it. But they really started with this idea of treatment-oriented resolutions. So many of our clients, again, have mental health issues, untreated, and untreated addiction issues. And Michael and Richard were at the forefront of educating judges about and DAs about the value of Alcoholics Anonymous, about the value of residential treatment. I remember when I started practicing in the late 90s, I would have to convince a judge that a program would be a very good and healthy substitute for jail. The other day I was in court and I pitched 30 days in residential treatment for my client instead of jail. And the judge looked at me and he said, Tariq, 30 days isn't enough. This person needs 90. And that is a revolutionary shift in the criminal justice system, because you know what? That person did need 90.
Right.
That judge was absolutely right. Not 90 days in jail.
Right.
That person needed 90 days in rehab to get healthy. And that judge now understands what sobriety and treatment, the potential for life-changing, profound life changes through treatment. And I give credit to guys like Michael and Richard, who started that way of criminal defense.
Right.
And so that's what I'll say about both of them. And that is, my practice is very treatment-oriented.
Right.
I am an expert in substance abuse issues and mental health issues. And getting my clients treatment not only gets them out of trouble, but very often transforms their life. I shouldn't say giving them that opportunity. It's their work in treatment that transforms their life. It's not me, it's them.
And they told you to always tell the truth. I wonder, pray tell, do you think someone told Rudy Giuliani that when he started practicing law? Okay, we won't go there. We
can talk for hours about that.
We won't go there. And
but
so
you see, you actually make my point.
Yes.
Because look at his reputation.
Yes. Just
right? And that's exactly what they were warning me against. That's exactly what they were warning me against.
Right. Don't let your legacy be taken down by that kind of thing.
That's right.
Well, I'll tell you. Are you presently working on any cases involving a client who has alcohol, drug issues, things of that nature? I know you can't talk about the case or the person. Right.
70% of my cases.
Okay.
70% of my cases. It really is the majority of my cases involve those things. And I have a very intimate relationship with substance abuse issues from my childhood on. And I also understand, like I said, if someone puts the work into it, we started talking about this in the beginning of the podcast.
Right.
There's something about hitting bottom.
Yes.
And I'm talking, and very often, and this is the irony. Very often someone doesn't realize they've hit bottom until they've gotten arrested.
Yes.
That is when their life is, as they would say, unmanageable, right? There's no denying your life is unmanageable.
Right.
I tell my clients, I can't define an alcohol or drug problem, but I say if it's adversely affecting your personal relationships, your employment, or you have legal issues because of it, you need to reassess your relationship with those things.
Right, right.
And what happens is that the motivation to get healthy very often is the leverage of a criminal case. And it's unfortunate, but I have seen so many clients that, and this is crazy, they come back years later and they say, it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow.
And this is what you were saying too about trauma. And about history,
right?
That it's a real crossroads when someone has hit bottom, when someone is dealing with trauma, it can take them down. But that power of that trauma, it can turn things around to the point where they come out of it in a more, and I'll say it, in a more spiritual way.
Right.
They have much more gratitude for life. They have much more faith.
Right.
And it's all a product, fortunately or unfortunately, of some very trying circumstances. And in my professional life, those trying circumstances involved potentially going to jail.
Right. Right. I'm praying for a person right now that she will come out of what she's in. But I happen to know a woman, attorney Khero, who was an attorney, well-established attorney. We'll never call her name, but there were people who thought this woman would be a congresswoman one day or a senator. She filed some lawsuits. She was an entertainment lawyer, and she has literally hit rock bottom. Well, I don't know what rock bottom is for her, but she's homeless now. And I actually met her at my homeless party. Every quarter, I throw a homeless party where we bring them in from Skid Row on buses to a location. We feed them great food, not peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, although there's nothing wrong with that. Barbecue. I bring homeless services people there. We get some of them housing. We have shower trucks set up, loud music, entertainment. It's called a homeless party. Google it if you will. But this person was there, and there is an attorney who chairs my board of directors, a Jewish lawyer by the name of John Eisen. And I remember telling him that there were many professionals who were homeless, psychiatrists, doctors, lawyers, etc. And I remember him seeing a couple of people there who were professionals also. But suffice it to say, this woman was at that homeless party, and she was riding on the bus with people from Skid Row. And when I Googled her and found out who she was, it's just unbelievable. We have a severe substance abuse problem in this country, an alcohol abuse problem, and doing the kind of work I do with homeless, I see it every day. So it sort of coincides with what you see in your practice.
It really does.
We have to do something.
And I'll tell you this, my father was a cardiologist, a successful cardiologist, and his drug addiction destroyed him to the point where he left our lives when I was 13 years old. I never saw him again. I found out he passed away in 98. Mm-hmm. I also found out that before he passed away, at some points in his life, he was living in his car.
Wow.
And he had spent almost a year in LA County jail. Wow. For substance abuse issues. So it is one of the most self-destructive forces that we deal with, one of the most pervasive ones that we deal with in our community. And I have to tell you this, that up until, again, about 10 years ago, I never would have told you that story. I would have felt shame, personal shame, because of what he went through. And now, in large part because of my own life experience and my professional experience, it's a story. It's a sad story, but it doesn't give me shame. And I can tell you many, many more about my clients where the opposite, it was the result. Unfortunately, he never got the treatment. He never wanted it. But those who want it and those who seek it and those who have that opportunity, there's a very good chance they not only return to how they were before they started drinking and using, they actually become a stronger, better person than they ever were.
Yes. Out of curiosity, you said you would not have told me that story because you would have felt shame. Why do you think that is? Why would you have felt shame?
I always felt shame about my father. I always felt shame about his addiction. I always felt shame about his leaving the family. I always thought, this was my inner voice, that if I told people that about them, they would judge me. They would like me less because of who my father was. And to get even kind of deeper, I look like my father. I have a Pakistani name. So the Pakistani component of me is my name and my appearance. It's not my culture. And when I was a kid, it reminded me of my father, the person who I felt had really done the most damage to my family. And so there was literally a form of self-hatred as a young person. And it's something I had to get over. And I am over it. But it's let me put it this way. There's a lot of young people in this world who live in households where there is substance abuse or untreated mental illness, and they feel shame unnecessarily because they live in that environment, even though it has nothing to do with them. Children very much often blame themselves for when their parents are unhealthy. And that's also very sad because it could lead them to self-destructive behavior. But I feel stronger, infinitely stronger because of that experience I had as a child.
How did it affect you when you found out that he was no longer with us? How How did that happen, and how did it affect
Well,
you?
both of those things I told you, that he had passed away and that he was in jail, both happened in a courthouse. I was a young attorney standing online at a clerk's office, and I'd gotten someone just left a message. Someone from Pakistan. I don't have a connection with Pakistan.
Wow.
And said that they were related to my father, and they wanted to let me know that he had passed away.
Wow.
I went into my car and I just wept. And I wept and I wept. And one of the things that it kind of broke the floodgates, because I tried to kind of build a wall between me and my father as a younger man. I didn't want to talk about him. I didn't want to think about him.
Right.
I thought he left me, so I'm leaving him.
Right.
But it broke those floodgates. And then the other crazy story is, I was in the same clerk's office at the airport court, and there was no one in the office. The clerk, I don't know, went away, and I was waiting forever. And I decided to go to the computer and type in my father's name. And a case came up, a felony case came up from the early 90s. And I had no idea. And then I took that case number and I asked the clerk, who I knew very well, who I love. I said, "You're never going to believe this." I almost had tears in my eyes. I found my father's name in the system. Could you pull up the records? And she did. And that was, it was a different time in my life when I felt much more comfortable with that story and who he was. And I told her everything. And,
Do you mind if I ask you what was his name?
no, his name was Bashir Khero, Basheer, Bashir Khero.
And when you call it, when you say his name aloud now, how do you feel? What does it make you feel?
It makes me feel, I say it very matter of factly. I used to get a pit in my stomach, and I used to start to sweat right here whenever I said his name, Bashir Khero. I'm maybe older than him, or as old as him when he died. I have a very good relationship with my children. They mean the most to me.
Yes.
And what I have found out,
How many kids do you have?
I have two. I have an 18-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter.
Wow, great. And they're doing good.
And the little last point I want to make about it is that the voice in my head as a child was wrong. The voice in my head said, if you tell someone that your father is sick or that this bad thing has happened to you, they're going to run for the hills. The reality is, if you tell someone my father has a substance abuse issue, more often than not, rather than go away, they move closer to you. And they say, me too.
That's deep. That's deep.
And it's a connection that you could never have unless you had that vulnerability and honesty. And again, these are things I've learned later in life, but they're very meaningful to me.
Is your mother still alive?
She's not. She passed away almost 10 years ago.
And what was her name?
Carlotta. Her name was Carlotta. Her maiden name was Long, and she was a hero. She worked 6 days a week. She put two kids through school. She got me, like I said, into. I was a good student who never got in trouble, and maybe that school wanted someone who didn't look like everybody else. But she got me into a school in Santa Monica. I did very well there. I went to an Ivy League school after that. I raised two healthy children, and I give all of that credit to my mother. This is what I said at her funeral. My mother grew up in a very, very abusive and alcoholic house. I said that my mother's whole childhood was like she was treading water. And my childhood, I always felt like I was walking on ice and it was cracking and I didn't know if it was going to break. And my children's childhood, they think that the floor, that the ground is granite. And the reason they don't feel any, they never once thought, my children, no matter what thoughts they've had, I can tell you, they never thought, does my parent love me? Will my parent hurt me? Will my parent leave? And the transformation from her childhood experience to theirs in a matter of 2 generations, it's all because of my mother. Her commitment to emotional health, sobriety, education, all of that. The reason my children feel so safe in this world is because of what she did for me.
Well, I know that she was definitely proud of you while she was still here, and I guarantee that if she could see the man that you have become now, she'd be very, very proud. I want to thank you for coming on the show. Frank Gooch never leads me down the wrong path. I can tell that you are a good man. my vibes, as I call them, intuition, and even deeper than that, spirituality tells me that you are a good, decent human being, as well as a great lawyer. Before you go, is there anything you'd like to say before I let you go? Thank you for coming on.
No, not really. I just want to say that I try very hard in my life, and this doesn't have to do with what you said about me, but I try very hard in my life to treat all people with dignity. I think it's one of the most important things that we can do for each other. It's contagious. Kindness and dignity, human dignity toward each other, no matter what's going on, is a contagious thing, and I try to do that the best I can. And I am grateful. I am grateful for my life. I'm grateful to be on planet Earth. You know, when I was in a worse headspace for much of my young life, they say that this is the transformation. I used to think that I had to do all these things in my life. I had to go to work. I had to run errands. I had to help this person. And now I think that I get to do it. I get to go to work. I get to run errands. I get to help other people. And it's a place of gratitude that I've worked very hard for, and I'm trying very hard to maintain. And so I just say that for other people who have gone through a lot of hardship, because there is this on the other side of it. And I'm not bragging. I say it with humility. I really do.
Well, I know that there are a lot of people watching me right now. Some of you are attorneys. You may have your own substance abuse problem that you're not telling anyone about because they are recreational drug addicts, but it's still destructive. As you watch this podcast, as you watch this story, I want you to know that there's hope for you and there's help for you. And as he just so eloquently stated, there is an other side, and you can get there. And those of you watching who have terrible lives right now, who you might consider them, because I talk to a lot of people every day who are in misery, just in pain. Life is not going the way they think it should be going. When you listen to Attorney Khero's story and see what he had to go through and see where he is now, maybe you'll believe me when I tell you that your history gets you ready for your destiny, and that everything you need for your destiny is actually locked up in the bowels of your history. Your history gets you ready to go there. You just have to keep the faith. You have to keep pushing. And as he just said, let's just love one another and be nice to each other. I mean, that doesn't take a whole lot. Just be good human beings. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been watching Yes We Can with Pastor Sherman D.Manning on what I think is one of the best shows I've had, 2 shows. I brought him back for a second hour. I thank him for coming on. Those of you who are watching today, please tell everybody you know about this podcast. Let them know that it's out there on Spotify, it's on Apple Music, it's on YouTube. And please, if you forget everything we said here, whatever your situation is in your city, in your community, in your neighborhood, please remember that you can make a difference and that we can turn this world around and we can get back to the beloved community. You can make a difference. We can do it together. Yes, we can.